My name is Chloe Vance. I'm 32, and while I manage a key division at a major technology firm, I've learned to be modest about my achievements, particularly when my brother, Leo, is around. But that 4th of July weekend, at our parents' lakeside cabin, I felt a shift in the air, a sense that something had to change. For years, Leo had belittled my professional life while painting his own with strokes of genius. The delicious, terrifying irony was that his failing startup had just been quietly absorbed by the very company I worked for. My stomach was a knot of anxiety as we all gathered around the picnic table. Before I get into what transpired when my quiet success finally roared louder than my brother's inflated ego, do me a favor and drop a comment to let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever had to deal with a family member who thinks they know everything, hit that subscribe button. Growing up in Seattle with Leo felt like living under a constant eclipse. A precedent was set the day he assembled his first computer at age 12, while I was busy weaving friendship bracelets. Leo was the tech prodigy. I was just his little sister, perpetually trying to catch his attention. "That's cute, Chloe," he would say with a dismissive air whenever I proudly showed him one of my accomplishments, making it painfully clear that my achievements were mere child's play next to his. When I took first place at the 6th grade science fair, Leo was quick to remark that my project on solar power was rather elementary compared to the advanced programming competition he had won that same year. Our parents, Mark and Susan, never intentionally chose favorites, but they were utterly mesmerized by Leo's technical prowess. My dad, an accountant who still found programming the TV remote a challenge, would look at Leo with awe when he spoke about coding, as if he were deciphering an ancient language. My mom, a high school English teacher, would just beam and nod, visibly impressed even if the specifics were lost on her. "Your brother has a unique mind," they would often tell me. Not many people can think the way he does. This dynamic persisted all through high school. I found my strengths in business courses and took on leadership roles, but these accomplishments always felt like footnotes compared to Leo's programming trophies and robotics club victories. When it was time for college applications, Leo was accepted into MIT with a partial scholarship for computer science. I opted for a business program at the University of Washington. Even though it was a fantastic school with a sterling reputation, Leo couldn't resist a little jab. "Business, huh? I suppose not everyone is cut out for the demands of a real STEM field." My parents would offer a weak reprimand, but it lacked any real force. "Leo, be kind to your sister," Dad would say, before immediately turning back to ask Leo about his latest coding endeavor, reinforcing the very hierarchy Leo had built. The only person who truly seemed to see me for who I was my grandmother, Evelyn. At 78, Grandma was a delightful anomaly in our family. She was fluent in the language of iPads and smartphones, far more tech-savvy than my parents. She had been a mathematics professor back in the 1970s, a time when women in her field were a rarity, and she saw a spark in me that everyone else seemed to miss. "They don't see it yet," she told me one Christmas break during my sophomore year of college, after a dinner where Leo had dominated the conversation with tales of his internship at Google. "But you possess something just as crucial as technical skill, Chloe. You have an understanding of people and how systems work. You see the larger picture, and that is vital in technology, too." Her words were a lifeline. I leaned into my strengths, graduating with honors and securing a marketing position at a small tech company called TechFlow. As expected, Leo was unimpressed. "Marketing at a tech company," he scoffed during my graduation dinner. "So, you'll be designing glossy pamphlets for gadgets you don't understand." I bit back my anger, making a silent vow to prove him wrong. I threw myself into my work at TechFlow, working harder than anyone. I didn't just master the marketing side. I dove deep into our products until I could articulate their value to any client. I enrolled in night classes for basic programming, not to become a developer, but to be fluent in the language of our engineering teams. Within 3 years, I was promoted to marketing director. 2 years after that, I was headhunted by Apex Innovations, a giant in enterprise software. Every single advancement in my career was met with the same condescending attitude from Leo. When I excitedly shared the news of my new role at Apex Innovations, Leo cut me off to talk about his latest startup concept. My promotion to team lead was overshadowed by his first round of seed funding. When I became a department head, he announced he'd been featured in a niche tech blog. Family gatherings grew progressively more strained. Leo would dominate every conversation with a barrage of technical jargon, positioning himself as the sole authority on the modern world. He would toss around terms like neural networks and blockchain architecture without bothering to explain them, effectively silencing any attempt at a meaningful discussion. "Don't sweat it if you don't follow," he'd say, his eyes often landing on me. "It's highly complex." My parents would practically glow with pride, while I sat there, quietly building a career without any of the fanfare. Across the table, Grandma Evelyn would catch my eye and offer a subtle, knowing wink. "Patience," her expression seemed to convey. "Your moment will arrive." And arrive it did, in a manner I could never have foreseen. 7 years into my journey at Apex Innovations, I was named the Director of Strategic Acquisitions. My job was to identify promising smaller companies for potential buyouts. It was during a standard review of potential targets that a name jumped out at me from the page. Innovatech, a startup with exciting technology but precarious financials. It was Leo's company. My career path at Apex Innovations had been anything but a fluke. While Leo was busy broadcasting his every move, I was quietly executing mine. I began in marketing, but quickly showed a talent for analyzing market trends and spotting new opportunities. My knack for acting as a bridge between the technical and business sides of the company made me indispensable. My strategic thinking propelled me up the corporate ladder far more quickly than I had ever anticipated. After 8 years, I was the Director of Strategic Acquisitions, a role that perfectly merged my business sense with my hard-won technical knowledge. My team was tasked with pinpointing companies that could either enhance Apex Innovations' current offerings or neutralize a future competitor. We evaluated dozens of potential acquisitions every quarter, scrutinizing not just their present value, but their long-term potential. It was in one of these routine scouting meetings that the name Innovatech surfaced. They had pioneered a novel approach to machine learning that had the potential to significantly improve our flagship product. The company possessed strong intellectual property and a team of gifted engineers, but they were fumbling with monetization and market entry, a frequent pitfall for brilliant technical founders who lack business savvy. "This one shows promise," my assistant, Alex, remarked, sliding the initial report onto my desk. "Small operation, fantastic tech, but they're burning through their capital way too fast. A textbook acquisition target." I opened the file, and my heart stopped when I saw the founder's name, Leo Vance. My brother's company was on our acquisition list, and he had no clue that I was in a position to shape its destiny. My immediate impulse was to recuse myself. The conflict of interest was glaring, and I prided myself on my professional integrity. But before I could hand the file over to a colleague, my curiosity won. What had my brother actually created, and how was his company truly faring? For the first time, I had a chance to peer behind the curtain of Leo's carefully constructed narrative. What I discovered was a surprise. The technology was genuinely groundbreaking. Leo had always been brilliant, but the business itself was in dire straits. Innovatech had blazed through 2 rounds of funding with almost no revenue to show for it. Their costs for acquiring new customers were completely unsustainable. Their marketing efforts were haphazard, and they had no clear route to becoming profitable. The very elements of business that Leo had always scoffed at as insignificant were precisely where his company was failing. I set up a meeting with our chief strategy officer, Rebecca Shaw, to go over the situation. "I need to declare a potential conflict," I stated as soon as we were seated. "Innovatech's founder is my brother." Rebecca's eyebrow shot up. "I had no idea your brother was in the tech industry." I let out a dry laugh. Oh, he's made it his mission to let everyone know he's in tech. He just conveniently leaves out that his sister works for a corporate sellout like Apex Innovations. After a thorough discussion of the ethical implications, we decided I would step back from any direct negotiations but could stay on in an advisory role. The acquisition was a smart move for Apex Innovations, irrespective of my personal ties, and my insight into both the tech landscape and my brother's work could prove valuable. Just make sure everything is by the book, Chloe, Rebecca cautioned. Document every communication, and we'll ensure there's no hint of favoritism or sabotage. For the next 3 months, I observed from the sidelines as our acquisition team performed its due diligence on Innovatech. Their conclusions mirrored my own initial analysis: brilliant technology crippled by poor business strategy. To my own surprise, I found myself championing the acquisition, despite my complicated feelings toward Leo. The technology was worth salvaging, and the team, with the possible exception of its founder, deserved a shot at success with the right support. What was most striking during this period was Leo's complete obliviousness to my position at Apex Innovations. At the few family functions that took place, he continued to talk down to me about technology, all while I sat there, silently aware of more about his company's financial health than he could ever imagine I understood. The acquisition was finalized 1 week before the 4th of July. Innovatech would become a subsidiary of Apex Innovations, with its technology integrated into our primary platform. Leo would remain as a technical advisor for a year, reporting to a manager who, in a twist of fate, reported to me. The financial terms were generous, more so than the company's performance justified, but we were acquiring intellectual property and talent, not existing revenue. As the holiday weekend neared, my anxiety about the inevitable family get-together mounted. Should I tell my family about my role before the barbecue? Should I give Leo a heads up? I called Grandma Evelyn for her wisdom. "You've done nothing wrong, Chloe," she stated with her usual firmness. "You've built a career to be proud of, and you've handled this entire situation with integrity. If Leo has misrepresented his own success or underestimated yours, that is on him to deal with." "But it's going to be so incredibly awkward," I moaned. "Perhaps," Grandma Evelyn responded, and I could almost hear the smile in her voice. "But sometimes a bit of awkwardness is the price of growth. Go to the party, be yourself, and let the truth find its own way to the table." So that's what I chose to do. I would go to the 4th of July barbecue without proactively revealing my part in the acquisition. I wouldn't lie if asked, but I wouldn't volunteer the information either. Let Leo spin his version of events first, I decided. After all these years in his shadow, I was genuinely curious to see how he would frame his company's successful exit. The 4th of July arrived with a deceptive calm. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. Wildflowers bloomed around my parents' cabin, and the air had that crisp, clean scent of the lake. I pulled into the gravel driveway with Daniel, my boyfriend of 2 years, in the passenger seat. Daniel gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. "Just remember, you haven't done anything wrong," he said, his words echoing Grandma Evelyn's. "And I'm right here for you." Daniel knew the whole story with Leo. He'd been to enough family events to grasp the dynamic and had been my confidant throughout the entire acquisition process. As a high school history teacher, he was thankfully removed from the tech bubble, making him the perfect impartial observer. "I know," I sighed. "I just can't stand confrontation." "Sometimes," he replied wisely, "it finds you anyway." Mom met us at the door with her usual burst of energy, pulling us both into tight hugs. "Chloe, Daniel, it's so wonderful to see you. Everyone's already out on the deck. We're just waiting on your Aunt Linda and Uncle Rob." By everyone, she meant Leo and his wife, Sarah, were already there, along with Grandma Evelyn and my father's brother, Uncle Dave, and his family. I took a deep breath and stepped out onto the sun-drenched deck. Leo was holding court near the grill, gesturing with a pair of tongs while Sarah stood by, smiling politely. Dad and Uncle Dave were listening intently, looking impressed by whatever he was explaining. Sarah saw me first and gave a warm wave. Despite the tension, I had always liked Sarah. She was a kind, down-to-earth pediatric nurse who seemed to balance Leo's ego with her own steady presence. "Chloe," she called out, coming over to give me a hug. "It feels like it's been forever." Leo turned, his story interrupted. "Oh, hey, sis, Daniel." He gave my boyfriend a curt nod before immediately turning back to his audience. "Anyway, like I was saying, the exit strategy played out perfectly. In this business, you have to know exactly when to cash out." My stomach did a slow flip. Exit strategy. Leo was already reframing the acquisition as his own masterstroke, rather than a desperate rescue of a sinking ship. "The tech world is so unpredictable right now," he went on. "But if you know the game, you can position yourself to get maximum leverage." Dad beamed with pride. "Leo was just telling us about his company being acquired. Sounds like you made a fantastic deal, son." "Is that so?" I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Congratulations, Leo." He shrugged with a practiced air of modesty. "It's just how the game is played. Not everyone can grasp the long-term strategy behind it." "Chloe works in tech, too," Daniel chimed in helpfully. Leo let out a short laugh. "Yeah, marketing for some corporate behemoth. It's not exactly the same as building and exiting your own startup." Before I could formulate a response, Mom called from the kitchen. "Chloe, honey, could you give me a hand with the potato salad?" Grateful for the reprieve, I slipped into the cabin, where Grandma Evelyn was arranging appetizers on a platter. She glanced up as I came in, her eyes sparkling. "Just in time," she said, passing me a serving spoon. "Your mother needs an assistant, and I need some entertainment. How is our tech titan spinning his tail out there?" "Grandma," I whispered, glancing back toward the deck. "He's making it sound like he orchestrated the whole thing as some brilliant strategic move." She chuckled quietly. "Men like your brother often have to rewrite history to keep their egos intact. The real question is, what are you going to do about it?" I started mixing the potato salad. "Nothing, I suppose. What am I supposed to do? Stand up and announce that his company was on the brink of collapse and mine saved it?" "You could," she said calmly. "Or you could just tell the truth if someone asks you directly. Not to shame him, but because the truth is important, especially within a family." "You don't think I should just let it slide? To keep the peace?" Grandma Evelyn placed a warm hand on mine. "Peace that's built on a lie isn't real peace, Chloe. It's just suppression. You've spent your entire life dimming your own light so Leo could shine brighter. Maybe it's time you stopped." Mom bustled in before I could reply, assigning us more food-related tasks. The next hour was a whirlwind of activity as the last of the guests arrived, filling the cabin with the boisterous energy of a large family gathering. Through it all, I could hear Leo's voice, always a little louder than the rest, as he continued to craft his narrative of entrepreneurial genius. As I helped Grandma set the large picnic table outside, she murmured, "Stand your ground, but don't force the issue. The truth has a way of finding its own moment." Finally, Mom announced that the food was ready. We all gathered around the sprawling table, passing platters and filling our plates. Leo had strategically placed himself in the middle, directly across from Dad, the ideal spot to command the conversation. Daniel and I sat near one end, with Grandma Evelyn beside me. As we settled in to eat, I could feel the tension coiling in my shoulders. Leo had spent the last hour misleading our entire family about his professional life while simultaneously belittling mine. And here I was, a silent party to his deception. Grandma Evelyn was right. This wasn't peace. As the dinner conversation inevitably shifted toward work and achievements, I knew the moment of truth was fast approaching. The 4th of July barbecue at the Vance family cabin was always an event. Mom's table was laden with classic summer fare: smoky barbecued ribs, corn on the cob, a massive bowl of potato salad, and her legendary honey-sweetened cornbread. Plastic cups, a mix of red, white, and blue, caught the afternoon sun, and paper plates with patriotic designs were stacked high. Aunt Linda raised her cup of iced tea. "Before we dig in, I think we should make a toast. To family, to summer, and to new adventures. And to success," Leo added quickly, lifting his own cup higher. "To new ventures and knowing the right time to cash out." Everyone dutifully raised their cups, though I saw Sarah's smile look a little tight around the edges. Grandma Evelyn's eyes met mine for a fleeting moment before we all took a sip, and the chaos of passing food began. The conversation started on safe ground, revolving around Cousin Amy's new puppy, Uncle Rob's recent fishing trip, and Aunt Linda's garden. But as the meal wore on, Leo became visibly antsy with topics that didn't put him in the spotlight. During a brief lull, he pounced. "So, Dad, I was thinking I could give you some advice on your retirement investments," he said, taking a large bite of his rib. "After this acquisition, I have some real insights into the future of tech that could seriously maximize your portfolio." Dad looked impressed. "That would be fantastic, son. I could definitely use the guidance." "What about you, Chloe?" Aunt Linda asked with genuine kindness. "How are things at your job, still with the same company?" Before I could even open my mouth, Leo interjected. "Chloe's still in marketing at that big corporate place. What's it called again? Apex Solutions." "Apex Innovations," I corrected softly. Right, Leo continued dismissively. "Anyway, as I was telling Dad, the real excitement is in the startup world. Corporate tech is where good ideas go to die." I took a slow, deliberate breath. "Actually, that's not. The problem with those corporate places," Leo cut in, getting into his stride, "is that they're filled with people who couldn't make it as entrepreneurs. No offense, Chloe," he added with a patronizing grin that made it clear he absolutely intended to offend. Mom tried to intervene. "Chloe has been promoted several times, Leo. She's doing wonderfully." Sure, Leo said with a condescending nod. "I'm sure she's excellent at whatever marketing things she does. But let's be honest, it's not the same as being in the trenches, building something from the ground up and taking on real risk." The table had fallen into an uncomfortable silence. Even Daniel, who was usually the epitome of diplomacy, was gripping his fork with white knuckles. I focused on meticulously cutting the corn off my cob, trying to will myself to remain calm. Leo, either oblivious to the tension or thriving on it, pressed on. "The tech world has a way of separating the visionaries from the support staff. Some people have what it takes to innovate, to disrupt, to spearhead technological revolutions. Others are just better suited for, well, supporting roles." He looked straight at me. "Not everyone has what it takes for a real career in tech." The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Mom looked horrified, Dad deeply uncomfortable. Sarah was staring at her plate as if it held the secrets of the universe. I felt Daniel's hand find mine under the table, a silent squeeze of support. And then, from the other end of the table, Grandma Evelyn's voice cut through the tension, clear and steady. "Is that why your company just acquired his?" Time seemed to freeze. Every head swiveled from Grandma to me, then to Leo, whose fork clattered onto his paper plate. His face, normally a mask of cool composure, went through a rapid series of expressions. Confusion, disbelief, and finally, dawning horror. "What?" he sputtered, his eyes darting between Grandma and me. "What are you talking about?" Grandma Evelyn took a calm sip of her iced tea. "I was just asking if that's the reason Chloe's company, Apex Innovations, acquired your startup, Innovatech, because they are the real tech innovators." A wave of confused murmurs washed over the table. Dad looked completely lost. "Chloe's company bought Leo's. What does that even mean?" Leo's face was now a deep shade of crimson. That's not how it happened," he stammered. "We were acquired, yes, but it was a strategic sale. I chose to sell, and Chloe had zero to do with it. She's in marketing, for crying out loud." All eyes turned back to me. For a split second, I thought about letting it go, about finding some smooth, diplomatic way to save Leo's pride. But then I remembered Grandma's words about truth, about family, and about all the years I had spent dimming my own light. "Actually," I said, my voice much steadier than I felt, "I'm the director of strategic acquisitions at Apex Innovations. I've been in the position for almost 2 years now." Leo gaped at me. "That's impossible. You would have told me." "Would I have?" I asked quietly. "When exactly would I have brought it up, Leo? In between your lectures on blockchain or your detailed explanations of why my job isn't real tech?" "Wait," Dad cut in, his brow furrowed. Are you saying you were part of the deal to buy Leo's company? She's lying, Leo snapped. She's just trying to steal credit for my success. If she was in acquisitions, I would have known about it. My team dealt with executives from Apex. Your team dealt with my team, I corrected him. I recused myself from the direct negotiations because we're family. But yes, I was involved in an advisory capacity, and I was the one who first flagged Innovatech as a potential acquisition. The stunned silence that followed was shattered by Sarah's quiet voice. It's true, Leo. I saw Chloe's name on some of the initial documents. I just assumed you knew and weren't talking about it. Leo looked at her, utterly betrayed. You knew, and you didn't say anything. I thought you knew, Sarah protested. Why wouldn't you know? Because she's lying. Leo shoved his chair back from the table violently, its legs scraping against the wooden deck. This was sabotage. You deliberately came after my company, didn't you? You couldn't handle that I was finally succeeding, so you had to find a way to take it over and ruin it. Your company was 3 months away from going bankrupt, Leo, I said, my voice level and calm. You had incredible technology, but no viable business model. The acquisition saved your company, it saved your employees' jobs, and it saved your reputation. How dare you? Leo was almost yelling now. You know nothing about the business of tech. Leo, Mom interjected, please calm down. I will not calm down, he shot back. My sister has been undermining me my whole life, and now she's trying to claim she rescued my company. That's unbelievable. I looked around the table at the shocked faces of my family. I'm not claiming I rescued anything. I'm just telling the truth about my job and what happened. Innovatech had valuable IP and talented engineers. That's why we bought it. It was a business decision, not a personal one. Leo laughed, a bitter, harsh sound. Right, just business. Is that why you never said a word about your job? Because it was so impersonal. I never said anything about my job because you never once asked, I said simply. You've never shown the slightest interest in my career, Leo. You've always been too busy telling everyone why your work is so much more important. The raw truth of that statement hung in the humid summer air. Leo opened his mouth to retort, then shut it again. Without another word, he turned and stormed off the deck. A moment later, the cabin door slammed shut. The table remained silent for several long seconds. Finally, Uncle Rob cleared his throat. Well, that was certainly a firework. Aunt Linda turned to me. Chloe, honey, I had no idea you were so high up at your company. Why on earth have you never told us? I looked around at my family, at the genuine bewilderment and curiosity on their faces, and I felt a weight I hadn't even known I was carrying begin to lift. I guess, I said softly, nobody ever really asked. As the shock of Leo's abrupt departure settled over the table, all eyes shifted to me. The entire family dynamic had been upended so quickly that no one seemed to know how to react. Sarah looked especially pained, caught between her loyalty to her husband and the undeniable truth that had just been laid bare. Perhaps, Grandma Evelyn suggested gently, this would be a good moment for Chloe to tell us what her career is actually like. Mom nodded eagerly, though her gaze kept flicking toward the cabin door where Leo had vanished. Yes, please. I feel awful that we know so little about what you do, sweetheart. I took a deep breath, feeling a strange sense of vulnerability. For so long, I had guarded my professional life from my family, partly due to Leo's dismissive attitude and partly because I had just gotten used to being overlooked. I did start at Apex Innovations in marketing, I began. But after 2 years, I moved into product strategy, then to business development, and finally to acquisitions. I've been with the company for 9 years now. 9 years, Dad said, looking amazed. That's a long time in tech, isn't it? It's such a volatile field. Michael nodded. It's extremely impressive. Chloe manages a team of 15 people and reports directly to the C-suite. A small smile touched my lips as I glanced at my supportive boyfriend. It's a great job. I really enjoy the work. But what is it that you do exactly? Aunt Linda asked, her interest clearly piqued. So I told them. I explained how my team scours the industry for promising companies, how we assess their technology and market potential, and how we structure deals that create value for both sides. I walked them through the process of due diligence, the art of negotiation, and the challenges of integrating a new company into our own. "That sounds incredibly complicated," Uncle Rob remarked. "I had no idea." "And Innovatech?" Dad asked tentatively. "How did that happen?" I laid out the process as factually as I could, focusing on the professional rationale and minimizing the personal drama. "The technology was genuinely first-rate," I said, determined to be fair to Leo despite everything. "Our engineering team was very impressed with what he and his people had built, but the business fundamentals just weren't there to keep the company afloat on its own." "So you did save them," Aunt Linda concluded. "We made a strategic business decision that was mutually beneficial," I corrected gently. "Apex Innovations acquired valuable IP and talent. Innovatech's investors got a much better return than they would have otherwise, and their employees all kept their jobs." "And Leo?" Mom asked quietly. "Leo was fairly compensated for his work and has a 1-year contract as a technical advisor," I explained. "After that, he can choose to stay on if it's a good fit for everyone." Sarah, who had been silent up to this point, finally spoke. "The acquisition saved us," she admitted, her voice soft but clear. "Leo wouldn't want me to say this, but we were in real trouble. He had poured everything into that company, our savings, a second mortgage on the house. We were about 3 missed payrolls away from losing it all." Her candor was startling. Leo had always portrayed their life as one of startup glamour and impending fortune. I never knew they were so financially exposed. "I didn't realize it was that bad," I said softly. Sarah nodded. "Leo is very proud. He would never admit how dire things had become. When the offer from Apex came through, it was like a miracle, but he couldn't see it that way. To him, it just felt like admitting defeat." Dad looked troubled. "But why didn't he tell us? We could have helped." "For the same reason he couldn't acknowledge that Chloe might be a success in his field," Grandma Evelyn interjected wisely. "Pride." The conversation lulled as we all processed this. I felt a tangled mix of emotions: vindication that my family finally understood my career, sadness for Leo's private struggles, and a lingering frustration that it had taken such a dramatic confrontation for the truth to finally surface. "I should probably go find him," Sarah said, starting to get up. "No," I said, making a snap decision. "I'll go." Michael squeezed my hand. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "We need to sort this out, once and for all." As I pushed my chair back, Mom looked worried. "Chloe, maybe you should give him some time to cool off." "We've given this situation years to cool down, Mom," I replied. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation." I found Leo sitting on the edge of the dock, staring out at the shimmering lake. He didn't turn as I sat down beside him, leaving a respectful distance between us. "Come to gloat?" he asked, his voice flat. "No," I said. "I came to actually talk, for once." He let out a humorless laugh. "What's there to talk about? You won, congratulations." "This isn't about winning and losing, Leo. It's about the truth." "And the truth is, I have spent my entire adult life being dismissed by you, listening to you convince our family that what I do is meaningless, because it's not real tech." "So this was your revenge, getting your company to absorb mine?" I sighed, frustrated. "Do you honestly believe that? Do you think I would jeopardize my professional reputation and risk violating corporate ethics just to get even with you?" Leo was silent for a moment. "When did you become director of acquisitions?" he finally asked. 2 years ago. And you never bothered to mention it." "When would I have mentioned it, Leo?" I countered. "During your monologues on neural networks." "You have never, not once, asked me a single question about my career." He had the decency to look a little ashamed. "I just assumed. You assumed I was in the same entry-level marketing job I started 9 years ago," I finished for him. "Because that fit your story that I wasn't cut out for real tech. Meanwhile, I was steadily moving up, managing bigger teams, taking on more responsibility, and actually succeeding in the very industry you claim I don't belong in." Leo was quiet for a long time, just looking at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was stripped of its usual defensiveness. "Innovatech was really failing, wasn't it?" The vulnerability in his question caught me by surprise. "The tech was solid," I said carefully. "But yes, the business was in trouble." I kept thinking the next round of funding would fix it, he admitted. That all we needed was a little more time. But we'd miss one milestone, barely hit another, and just keep moving the goalposts. That's actually very common for startups, I offered. It's why most of them don't make it. I didn't want to fail. For the first time, Leo looked directly at me, and I was shocked by the raw pain in his eyes. I've built my whole identity around being the tech genius of the family. What am I if that isn't true? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with years of rivalry and misunderstanding. I chose my words carefully. You are a tech genius, Leo. Your coding ability is off the charts, and the core technology you developed at Innovatech is truly innovative. Nobody is questioning that. But, I continued, building a successful business takes more than just technical skill. It requires business strategy, market insight, financial planning, all the things you wrote off as unimportant. He winced. The things you're good at. Yes, I acknowledged. The things I'm good at. We could have been a powerful team all these years, complementing each other's strengths. Instead, you treated me like I was less than you because I focused on the business side of our industry. Leo ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar from our childhood it briefly took me back to a simpler time. I've been a jerk, haven't I? The bluntness of his admission surprised a laugh out of me. Yes, you really, really have. A faint smile crossed his lips. Can I blame it on the typical arrogance of programmers? You can try, but I work with a lot of programmers who manage not to be condescending to their sisters. The smile vanished, and he looked genuinely remorseful. I'm sorry, Chloe. I really am. I don't think I ever realized how dismissive I was until I heard it all laid out today. It was the first real apology I could recall getting from my brother in over a decade. Thank you for saying that. So what happens now? He asked. With Innovatech with me? That's partly up to you, I said honestly. The integration team sees real potential in your technology as part of our enterprise suite. You know that code better than anyone. If you can swallow your pride and work as part of a team, there's a place for you. Working for my little sister's company, he said, but the words lacked the bitterness I would have expected. Working with a company that values your technical expertise, I corrected. My division handles the acquisitions, but I wouldn't be your direct boss. That would be Marcus in technical integration, and he's brilliant. You'd actually learn a lot from him. Leo was quiet for another moment. I need to think about it. That's fair, I agreed. But don't take too long. This industry moves fast, as you know. We sat in silence for a few minutes, watching a neighbor paddleboard across the lake. It wasn't a comfortable silence, but it wasn't hostile either. It was progress. We should probably head back, I finally suggested. Mom is probably having a panic attack, and your food's getting cold. Leo nodded. This is going to be awkward, isn't it? Probably, I admitted. But maybe it's time we started being honest with each other and with the rest of the family. No more pretending. He took a deep breath and stood up. No more pretending, he agreed, holding out a hand to me. I took it, let him pull me to my feet, and together we walked back toward the cabin, toward a family barbecue that was bound to be uncomfortable, but also, perhaps, the first honest one we'd had in years. Walking back onto the deck with Leo at my side felt like stepping into a parallel universe. The conversation died instantly, and every head turned our way, expressions filled with a mix of concern and curiosity. Sarah looked especially relieved to see her husband, some of the tension visibly draining from her shoulders. Is everything all right? Mom asked tentatively. Leo and I exchanged a look. We're working on it, I replied honestly. We resumed our seats, and an awkward quiet settled over the table. Uncle Rob cleared his throat. Should we, get back to dinner? Yes, please, I said, grateful for the suggestion. Could someone pass the cornbread? The meal continued with a forced sense of normalcy, the conversation carefully navigated around neutral subjects. But there was an unspoken understanding that something fundamental had shifted in our family's ecosystem. James was quieter than I'd ever seen him, only contributing to the conversation when someone addressed him directly. I could practically see the gears turning in his head as he reprocessed everything, recalibrating his view of our relationship and his own story. As dessert was served, Mom's traditional cherry pie, Leo suddenly spoke up. "I owe everyone an apology," he said, his voice stripped of its usual bravado. "Especially you, Chloe." All eyes snapped to him in surprise. Leo Vance did not apologize, it just wasn't part of his programming. "I haven't been truthful about my company's situation," he continued. "The reality is, Innovatech was in serious trouble. The acquisition by Apex Innovations wasn't my brilliant exit plan. It was a lifeline that I was very lucky to get." Heather reached out and squeezed his hand. "And I have been less than supportive of Chloe's career," he admitted. "Actually, that's putting it mildly. I've been dismissive and arrogant, and I was completely wrong. She's accomplished more in this industry than I ever realized, and I should have been cheering her on instead of trying to tear her down." The raw sincerity in his voice left me speechless. This was a version of Leo I hadn't seen since we were kids, before ego and competition built a wall between us. Dad looked back and forth between us, clearly trying to reconcile this new information with decades of established family lore. "Leo, we had no idea things were so tough with the company. Why didn't you say something?" Leo shrugged, a gesture that was both defensive and vulnerable. "Pride, I guess. I was always the tech prodigy, the successful one. Admitting I was failing didn't fit the brand." "But sweetheart," Mom said gently, "success isn't about never failing. It's about how you respond to challenges." "Besides," Grandma Evelyn added with her signature directness, "it seems the real tech success story in this family has been quietly unfolding, while the rest of us were distracted by the louder narrative." She smiled at me, and I felt a wave of gratitude for her unwavering belief in me. "I think," Dad said slowly, "that we owe Chloe an apology, too." He turned to me, genuine regret in his eyes. "We should have asked more about your work, celebrated your successes the same way we celebrated Leo's. I'm sorry we failed to do that." "We are so proud of you, sweetheart," Mom added, her eyes moist. "I just wish we had known more about everything you were achieving." The validation I had been subconsciously craving for years washed over me, both deeply satisfying and a little overwhelming. "Thank you," I managed to say. "That means a lot." "So what happens next?" Aunt Linda asked. "With the company, I mean." Leo looked at me, a silent deference that acknowledged my expertise. The reversal of our roles was so stark it took me a second to respond. "Innovatech's technology will be integrated into Apex's main platform," I explained. "The technical team will have the option to join us, including Leo, who has a 1-year contract as a technical advisor." "And will you?" Uncle Rob asked Leo directly. "Stay on." Leo glanced at me, then at Sarah before he answered. "I'm considering it. It would mean taking on a very different role than I'm used to." He paused, seeming to choose his words with care. "But maybe it's time I learned some new skills, the business side of things specifically." It was the closest he'd ever come to acknowledging my expertise. I decided to meet him halfway. "The tech industry is at its best when different kinds of expertise work together," I offered. "Technical genius and business acumen aren't mutually exclusive. They're complementary." "Like a brother and sister," Grandma Evelyn suggested with a knowing smile. Leo actually laughed. "Exactly like that, I suppose." As the meal wound down, the conversation started to feel more natural. For what felt like the first time in our adult lives, Leo and I had a real dialogue, not just competing monologues. He asked me questions about my role at Apex with genuine curiosity, and I asked him about the technical hurdles he had overcome at Innovatech. Our family watched this exchange with a sort of wonder, as if they were witnessing a rare celestial event. After dessert, while we were clearing the table, Dad pulled me aside. "I really had no idea, Chloe," he said quietly. "About your job, about how successful you've become. Why didn't you tell us more?" I thought about the question for a moment. "I think after a while I just got used to being in the background. Leo was always so loud about his accomplishments that it just felt easier to be quiet about mine." Dad looked genuinely pained. "We should have noticed. I should have noticed." "It's okay, Dad," I reassured him. "We all fell into our roles, but maybe now we can create some new ones." Later, as we gathered in the living room for coffee, Grandma Evelyn orchestrated one final moment. "I think," she announced with the authority only a family matriarch possesses, That we should have a proper toast to both of my grandchildren and their incredible achievements in technology. She raised her coffee mug, her eyes twinkling. To Leo, whose technical brilliance created something of real value, and to Chloe, whose business savvy ensures that such innovations can actually reach their full potential. May they both continue to thrive, perhaps even together. To Leo and Chloe, the family echoed, raising their cups. Leo caught my eye from across the room and lifted his mug a little higher in my direction. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes about the shift in our relationship. As the afternoon faded into evening and people started to leave, Leo came over to me one last time. "I meant what I said earlier," he told me quietly. "I am sorry for how I've treated you and your career." "I know," I said, "and I appreciate it." He hesitated, then added, "I'm going to take the job at Apex. I have a lot to learn about the business side of tech." He smiled wryly. "And it seems I have access to a pretty good teacher." I couldn't help but smile back. "Just promise not to call it not real tech, and we'll be fine." "Deal," he said, extending his hand formally. I ignored the handshake and gave him a quick hug instead. "Happy 4th, Leo." "Happy 4th, Chloe," he replied, and for the first time in years, the nickname felt like an endearment, not a dismissal. Driving home that evening with Daniel, I felt both completely drained and strangely energized. Years of ingrained family dynamics had been rewritten in a single afternoon. Old habits were broken, and new possibilities had emerged. "How are you feeling?" Daniel asked as we navigated the light evening traffic. I thought about it carefully. "Like something that has been tied in a knot for a very long time is finally starting to loosen," I said. "It's uncomfortable, but it's also liberating." He smiled. "Your grandmother is quite a woman, you know that?" I laughed. "Oh, I know. She's been waiting for this showdown for years." "Do you think things will actually change with Leo?" "I think they already have," I said thoughtfully. "Whether that change sticks, well, that's up to both of us." As we pulled into our driveway, I realized I felt lighter than I had in a very long time. The truth, once it was finally spoken, had cleared away years of cobwebs spun from misunderstanding and resentment. There would be awkward moments ahead, for sure. Old habits would try to reassert themselves, and new boundaries would need to be drawn. But for the first time since we were children, I felt a sense of hope for my relationship with my brother, not as rivals, but as colleagues, maybe even as collaborators, as family. 3 months after that explosive 4th of July, I found myself sitting across from Leo in the Apex Innovations cafeteria. It had become our weekly tradition. Tuesday lunch, a time to discuss the integration of Innovatex technology and to just catch up as siblings. Today, Leo was excitedly explaining a new tweak to the algorithm that had been Innovatex core product. "The processing speed is up by 37%, he said, his eyes lit with the same fire he always had when talking about a technical puzzle. "Marcus thinks we can push it even higher if we re-architect the data pipeline." I smiled, genuinely impressed. "That's incredible, Leo. The enterprise clients will be thrilled with that kind of performance." "It was actually building on a suggestion from your data science team," he admitted, a statement that would have been impossible for him to make 4 months prior. "Turns out there are some pretty smart people here at the corporate behemoth." We both laughed at the reference to his old put-down. In the 3 months since he'd joined the company, I'd watched Leo slowly acclimate to the corporate world. It hadn't been without its bumps. His tendency to speak with blunt force had ruffled a few feathers in HR, and he had initially chafed at the layers of approval needed for every change. But he was learning. And more surprisingly, he seemed to be thriving with the stability and resources that a larger company offered. "How are things with Marcus?" I asked, referring to his direct manager. Leo considered the question. "Good, actually. He really knows his stuff, and he's not a micromanager. I'm learning a ton from him about project management and leading a team." He smiled wryly. "Still a work in progress. Turns out managing people involves a whole different skill set I haven't quite developed." This new self-awareness was perhaps the most profound change in my brother. The Leo of 6 months ago would never have admitted to a skill gap. "You'll get there," I assured him. It just takes time. Our conversation shifted to family matters. Mom and Dad had visited the Apex campus the week before, finally getting a real look at what both of their children did for a living. It had been a revelation for them, especially for Dad, who had spent the entire tour alternating between proud exclamations and confused questions about the cloud. "I think they're still trying to process it all," Leo said. 20 years of thinking I was the only tech person in the family, and now they're trying to wrap their heads around the fact that you've been quietly outturning and outranking me for years. "Not outranking," I corrected gently. "Different paths, different skills." He nodded, accepting the distinction. "Fair enough. Speaking of family, are you free for dinner at Grandma Evelyn's this weekend? She specifically asked for both of us." I smiled. Since the summer, our grandmother had been even more intentional about nurturing our repaired relationship. "Wouldn't miss it. That woman's cooking is worth any family therapy session she has planned." "She's as subtle as a bulldozer," Leo agreed affectionately. "But she's effective." As we finished our lunch and walked back toward our different parts of the building, I reflected on how much had changed. Our relationship was still a work in progress. Decades of ingrained patterns don't just vanish in a few months. There were still moments when Leo would slip into his old, condescending tone when talking about technical details, but now he would catch himself, often with a sheepish grin. And I was learning to assert my own expertise confidently, rather than just silently fuming when I was overlooked. Our parents were adapting, too. Mom had started asking me specific questions about my work, making a real effort to understand. Dad had taken to forwarding me articles about women in tech leadership, his own way of showing that he finally saw my place in that world. The most significant change, however, was within me. After years of shrinking my accomplishments to maintain a false peace, I was learning to take up space, to own my expertise, and to correct misperceptions without feeling the need to apologize for it. In my professional life, this new confidence led to more effective leadership and clearer communication with my team. The following weekend, as planned, Leo and I met Grandma Evelyn for dinner at her cozy apartment. After a delicious meal of her famous pot roast, she served coffee in the living room and fixed us both with her signature, no-nonsense gaze. "So," she said, settling into her favorite armchair, "how are my two tech executives getting along these days?" Leo and I exchanged an amused look. "Subtlety isn't your strong suit, is it, Grandma?" I teased. "At my age, my dear, there's no time to waste beating around the bush," she retorted. "Well, we're doing well," Leo answered. "Better than I ever expected, honestly." "He's learning to take feedback without seeing it as a personal insult," I added with a smirk. "And she's learning to give feedback without it sounding like a corporate training seminar," Leo shot back good-naturedly. Grandma Evelyn smiled, a look of deep satisfaction on her face. "Good. A family should be honest with one another but also kind." "I've been thinking about that a lot," I said. "About honesty in families. For years, we all played a part in this story that Leo was the only tech success. Me by staying quiet, Leo by exaggerating his wins, and the rest of the family by never questioning the story. It was comfortable," Leo admitted. "For me, at least, I got to be the star." "And what have you learned from having that comfort taken away?" Grandma asked him. Leo thought about it seriously. "That comfort isn't the same as growth. That being the star kept me from learning things I desperately needed to know. And," he glanced at me, "that I missed out on having a powerful ally because I was too busy treating my sister like a rival." Grandma nodded, pleased, before turning to me. "And you, Chloe, what have you learned?" "That silence isn't the same as peace," I said. "That making myself smaller to make others feel bigger wasn't helping anyone, especially not me. And that being authentic, while it can be uncomfortable, is the only way to be truly known and loved." "Very good," Grandma said, sounding like the professor she once was. "Now, the real challenge is to carry these lessons with you. Family patterns have a nasty habit of reasserting themselves if you're not careful." "We're working on it," I assured her. "Leo has actually been asking for my advice on managing his new team at Apex." And Chloe has been consulting me on the technical side of some upcoming acquisitions, Leo added. Turns out our skills really do complement each other. As I've been telling you for about 30 years, Grandma noted dryly. We all laughed, the sound of genuine warmth filling her small apartment. As the evening ended and we got ready to leave, Grandma Alina took both of our hands in hers. I'm proud of you both, she said simply. Not just for your professional success, as impressive as it is, but for doing the difficult work of breaking unhealthy family patterns. That requires more courage than any career achievement. On the drive home, I reflected on her words. It had taken courage to shatter the comfortable fiction our family had lived by for so long. But the freedom that came with that authenticity was worth all the temporary discomfort. Leo and I would never have a flawless relationship. Siblings rarely do. We were too different, too shaped by our own histories. But we had finally found a way to respect those differences instead of letting them create a divide. We saw them as complementary, not competitive. In the tech world, where change is the only sure thing, adaptability is the key to success. Leo and I had finally applied that lesson to our own relationship, and we were both stronger because of it. The truth, it turned out, hadn't destroyed our family as I had once feared. It had rebuilt it on a much stronger foundation. One where achievements weren't ranked but celebrated, where differences were seen as assets, not threats, and where being truly known was more important than being impressive. It was a lesson I took with me into every part of my life. That real connections, built on honesty instead of performance, were the most valuable technology of all. Have you ever had a moment where speaking your truth transformed a relationship for the better? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey of sibling rivalry turned collaboration, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories about navigating the complexities of family. Share this with someone who might need a little permission to let their own light shine without dimming it for anyone else. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most important disruption isn't in technology, but in the old patterns we've accepted for far too long.